means that something owes its existence to something else. I am a contingent being because if it weren't for my parents, I wouldn't be here. If it weren't for the atoms that make up my body, I wouldn't be here. If it weren't for the food that I've been eating over the last 35 years, I wouldn't be here. If it weren't for all kinds of things, I wouldn't be here. I and everything about me is a contingent being. This chair right here is contingent. The floor is contingent. The ceiling's contingent. The air around me is contingent. Because the air around me is filled with nitrogen and helium and oxygen. And if it weren't for the sun burning these things and sending them out into the universe and other stars exploding, those things would never get here. And so everything physical is contingent. It means it owes its existence to something else. A necessary being is something that is perfectly necessary. It owes its existence only to itself. There's nothing that it depends on. And so here's the deal. If something is contingent, it owes its existence to something else. What is that something else? Well, let's go back one step. My parents. Okay, let's go back another step. Their parents. Let's go back another step. Their parents. How many steps back can we go? Well, there are only two options. Either we eventually get to a place where there's a necessary something that started it all, or we have an infinite chain that keeps going all the way back. And now we're back to the quantum vacuum. Because scientists these days totally accept this argument. They say this is totally true. We totally get this. We totally understand it. But we claim that the universe itself is the necessary being. This quantum vacuum, nothing that is something, is actually necessary. That's the thing. And so you're left with just a couple options. You might want to write these down. Maybe you don't care about this particular thing, but here you go. Either the universe itself is necessary, or the universe itself is God. The Stoics would have liked that. Or the universe itself is created by a necessary being. Or that whole quantum vacuum thing is just wrong and we don't have a clue what we're talking about. That's certainly a good option. But here you go. So either it's necessary and not God, or it is God, or God made it happen. Does that make sense? So far, we haven't yet proven that God exists. All we've done is we've shown that there is the possibility for God's existence and there's the need for God's existence. Because I'm going to go one step further with you. Take this vacuum thing. If it's making stuff, if it's doing stuff, then it is something. It's not just nothing. And if it is something, it's contingent. It must have come from somewhere. And I'm just going to say it this way. You can ask me questions next week about this. But in order for anything to have popped the universe into existence, it needed to have the ability to choose to do it or to not do it. Okay? Because see, if you've got this amorphous quantum vacuum that can just pop universes into existence randomly, and if it's been around for an infinite amount of time, then we should have an infinite number of universes that are all crashing into each other and really messing each other up. And that would, bizarro world or something. So we've got to have some type of decision-making process to make it happen. So I think as far as you can go, as you could say, there must be a deciding being who is this necessary being. Okay, the last two go more quickly. Number 3 is on the back side of your page there. If Jesus truly rose from the dead, his teaching is most authoritative. I like to put it this way. I'm going to have a contest for who's right, and the first person to come back from the dead wins. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you tell me something about God, and then you die, and then you wake up again 3 days later, and you're like, hey, man, touch me here, look me here, see that right there? I'm going to be like, whoa, okay, I'm going to follow you. You're the one I'm going to pay attention to. Because there are a whole bunch of people who've told things about, death and the afterlife, but only one guy who's actually been there and come back. So I think he wins. So this is what Paul is saying. Paul says Jesus actually came back to life. And look at this verse here in 1 Corinthians 15. It's on your note sheet. If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. Now you might sometimes feel like preaching is useless, but Paul is saying so is your faith if Jesus hasn't been physically raised from the dead. Jot this down somewhere if you want, but Jesus' first followers did not die as martyrs for religion. They died as martyrs because they claimed something happened in history. They claimed a historical event took place where a man came back to life. And that was so threatening that they were killed for it. It wasn't a religious thing. It's not that they said, we believe Jesus is God, and then they got killed for it. It's that they said, we believe Jesus came back to life from the dead, and that's why we believe he's God, and they got killed for it. It could have changed in a heartbeat if they just simply said, you know what, coming back from the dead really doesn't seem likely. If they had changed their mind on that, then all the rest of it they would never have been killed for. But they died for that historical claim. That's like me saying, I drove from my house to here today. And I drove a black Jeep from my house to here today. And then you come up to me and you say, I'm going to kill you for that. I'm going to be like, whoa there. I know it actually happened. But if you're going to kill me for that, then, maybe I might reconsider that because that's an inconsequential thing. But at the very least, I know that happened. They saw it. They know it happened. Okay, move on. Last one. Paul says this, and I think it's true. Relationship fills in the blanks. Okay. So how do you prove God exists? Well, you got to start by saying it's possible. You got to then say he's needed. Something like him is needed. Then you say the resurrection is fact. So the person who is raised was probably right. But finally, you have to get to the place where you say, I've got a relationship. Let me share with you a couple verses here. The point is, if God really exists and if Jesus was really resurrected and if his followers really reported well on what he taught, then I'm in the dark unless I have a relationship with him. Look at 2 Corinthians 4:4. It says, the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. People have been blinded if they don't know Jesus. If they haven't put their faith in him, they are blinded. Without a relationship, the blanks are still blank. Or then look at John 12. Jesus says, I've come into the world as a light so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness.